murder, secrets unfold. True crime stories, let the intrigue be told. Grab a seat, get cozy, let's dive into the plot. With Mac J by my side, there's so much to be sought. Mods from the stars, they light up the night. Chillin' with Van, everything feels just right. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. Spirit Time vibes with Lisa and Mark. Tia and Mel igniting the spark. According to Lean, curiosity flows. A curious rose in a garden of woes. Sweet misery whispers, tales that enthrall. While Matt, Meg and Jody, we gather them all. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. So come along, join the fun tonight. In Aussie true crime, everything feels so right.
Hey, beautiful people. Welcome in.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry.
That's right. I don't know if they're still in here, but I've got beautiful Tabby and Jody and Kez. 8 months. Oh, my God. Makes me excited. Miss Miga? And sorry. Welcome in, my darling, and welcome to our channel. So, yes, tonight I've got something different for William, and it's another one that was done on it, but this one was done through Case Files. It's a 2-part series, but I think we'll probably break it up to about 4 because I know the first part of this is like 2 hours long. I haven't watched them, so I don't know how true to the facts it is, but I thought we'll go over it because why not? We have time.
Yes. May I ask, is it American covering it or an Australian doing it?
I don't know. I have put the link in the chat. It was only done a month ago.
So it's relatively new.
Yeah. It was a 2-part that was done a month ago. Hang on, let me bring it up. So I have put the link in the chat. Hey, Twiggy, welcome in, my darling. But it's called Where is the Boy in the Spider-Man Suit?
Our episodes deal with serious and often distressing incidents. If you feel at any time you need support, please contact your local crisis centre. For suggested phone numbers for confidential support and for a more detailed list of content warnings, Please see the show notes for this episode on your app or on our website. Today's episode involves crimes against children and won't be suitable for all listeners. Have been changed from being identified, while others have been changed. 2014, when a call came through to the New South Wales Police Emergency Helpline. On the other line was a woman named Angela, calling from the small hinterland town of Kendall, located on the state's mid-north coast.
Police emergency, this is Simone.
Yeah, hi, my son is missing. He's 3.5. Sorry,
What's your address?
Benneroon Drive, Kendall.
Okay, Benneroom Drive in Kendall.
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to bring that up on my map. It won't be a moment.
Thank you.
How long has he been missing?
I think we've been looking for him now for about 15 or 20 minutes, but
Okay.
I thought it could be 5, it could be longer, because he was just playing around here. We heard him, and then we heard nothing.
Okay. So what the nearest cross street being Ellendale Crescent, is that right?
So what is it?
Ellendale Crescent?
I don't know. This is my mum's house.
Okay. So he's been missing since about 10:30.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, can you describe him to me? How tall? Obviously not very tall.
No, he'd be about 2.5 feet. He's wearing a Spider-Man outfit.
Yep. What colour hair has he got?
He's got dark sandy-coloured hair. It's short. He's got really big browny green coloured eyes.
Okay. What's he got any shoes on? Do you know any other distinguishing features?
He's got a freckle on the top of his head when you part the hair on the left-hand side.
Yep.
You'll see a freckle on the top of his head.
Okay. All right. Do you know where he might have gone?
We actually live, Mum's property near a state forest,
Okay.
and they're on huge blocks. We've walked up and down Benneroon Drive.
Does she sound like she's even in a panic? In the 911
Not at all.
call?
She sounds too calm. Like you hear some other 911 calls and they're like full of panic.
Because, like, even when, as we know, like my grandson, when he burnt himself a couple of months ago, even that, I was a mess when I called 000. I was a complete mess. And she's just so calm. And this is the actual call because I have the call. This is the actual call. Just gets me every time I hear it. Not that it should surprise us.
No.
We can't find him.
Okay. What's his name?
William.
What's William's surname?
Tyrrell. Tyrrell.
Yeah, exactly. Shame. Like, I know my grandson burning himself's not the same as someone missing, but even just that, it was like... She's just very calm.
Senior
that the
Constable
actual
Christopher
case?
Rowley was already in the area when he received word of the missing 3-year-old boy in Kendall.
Yep.
Is that the actual case number or is it just the channel's case number?
Oh, no, that's just the channel's case number.
Ah, got it.
He arrived at Benneroon Drive at 11:06 a.m, by which time William Tyrrell had reportedly been missing for just over half an hour. The single-storey brick home of William's grandmother, Mary Saunders, sat on a sharp slope high upon a corner block, elevated above a large garage and workshop space. Hers was one of the last houses on the dead-end street, with 3 sides of the property backing onto dense bushland, framed by lawns and native trees.
I think I have the actual call. Yeah, she did, but I think I have the actual call on the channel. If I don't, I will upload it for you because I know I do have it. So I'll check if I've got it on my channel in my videos and we'll play it at the end. If not, I will upload it tomorrow for you.
A veranda wrapped around the length of the house, with a 5-metre high balcony providing the perfect spot to take in the scenic easterly views. Senior Constable Rowley found William Tyrrell's mother, Angela, in a clear state of distress, walking down the middle of the street in tears. Her husband Peter was frantically dashing around, calling William's name and checking the surrounding properties. The family of 4 had only arrived in Kendall at around 9 the previous evening, after driving the roughly 4-hour journey from their home in Sydney's northern beaches. Angela's father had recently passed away, and the purpose of the visit was to help her mother Mary organise her house for sale. The substantial 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on a 1.2-acre block was simply too big for the elderly woman to look after on her own. According to Angela, that morning of Friday, September 12, 2014, the 2 Tyrrell children had woken up in good spirits. William and his 4-year-old sister, Lindsay, were excited to be at their grandmother's house, a place they had visited several times before. Their father, Peter, had to make a video call for work, but the internet reception in Kendall was notoriously lousy, so he left the house at around 8:30 a.m. to make the call from the nearby town of Lakewood instead. While Peter was gone, William and Lindsay rode their bikes around Mary's driveway and explored the yard. Afterwards, William played a game with his mother called Mummy Monster, which involved Angela chasing her son around the garden. When they were done, they climbed the steep slope back up to the house. The grass was covered in loose twigs and leaves, and they kept slipping over. One of the slips resulted in Angela injuring her hand, so they went inside to tend to the wound. Lindsay had heard them playing Mummy Monster and wanted to join in the game, so they went back outside for a while. After the kids grew bored of that, William and Lindsay decided to make some cards to bring to their grandfather's grave when they visited later that day. Angela set them up with some art supplies on the back deck that overlooked the rear lawn. Shortly after 9:30 a.m, she grabbed her digital camera and snapped some photos of them. William was thrilled that he'd been allowed to wear his new favourite outfit, a 2-piece blue and red Spider-Man costume that his parents had bought him on a recent family holiday to Bali. He put a Spider-Man t-shirt underneath the polyester suit so he could be head to toe in his favourite superhero get-up. At 9:37 a.m, Angela stood above William and pointed the lens towards him as he crouched on the deck, pretending to be a tiger. The little boy looked up at her, his eyes cast to the sky and mouth agape as he let out a loud roar. It wasn't long before William lost interest in the craft session and began a new game he called Daddy Tiger.
I think that's a photo that's edged in every Australian's mind.
I agree.
This involved him crawling around and launching himself off the deck as he roared and clawed his hands in the air. He asked Lindsay to join in, but she was too engrossed in the card-making process. William continued the game alone, ducking around the side of the house out of sight for a moment before reappearing with a loud roar. Just before 10 a.m, Angela said that she and her mother were sitting and watching the kids over a cup of tea. Mary remarked how loud William was being, and Angela explained that's just how he was, always full of energy. The 2 women looked on as William darted around the garden, jumping and roaring enthusiastically. He then ran around the northwest corner of the house and out of sight, the sound of his roar still clearly audible. After a few minutes, Angela noticed it had gone unusually quiet. She got up and walked around the side of the house, but she couldn't see William anywhere. Angela called out William's name, saying, "Where are you? I can't see you." There was no reply. She looked for splashes of his red Spider-Man costume against the vibrant green foliage, noting it was suddenly so quiet that even the birds seemed to have stopped chirping. Angela told Mary that she couldn't see William anywhere. Thinking he was hiding and playing a trick on them, Mary remarked, "Oh, the little devil." But Angela was starting to get worried. She went around the eastern side.
All we know is we're supposed to get the answers from the coroner sometime this half of the year. It was the later half, so the last 6 months. And we are counting down because we're now in September.
Yep. We'll see. They might delay it again.
I pray every day I wake up and there's going to be the results in.
Of the house and looked in the ferns that sat underneath the balcony, all the while calling William's name. When he didn't appear, she became frantic. Mary's property had no fence or other barrier to prevent William from wandering beyond its boundary. Angela ran to the street, checking each side of the yard, but she still couldn't see or hear William. She ran into her mother's house, with Mary following, checking each room and opening cupboards to see if he was hiding inside.
Ozzy,
Yeah.
Angela tried to remain calm so that William
doesn't
wouldn't
she
panic,
change
thinking
her
he was in
story
trouble.
about where she went in the house?
Hey?
Doesn't she change her story about where she went in the house?
Yeah, because in her interview she says that she went in to make a cup of tea and could see everyone from the window. Now, in this, they're saying it was a cut, so.
Ah, I thought so. I remembered it from last time.
Yeah, apparently he was playing where he was running around the house and being a tiger. And then he's gone around the house and he didn't come back around and she was inside making a cup of tea. That was her story.
Yep.
The story from the family involved sounds very, yeah. As I said, I haven't listened to this, so I didn't know which take they're listening to. It depends where they've got their evidence and who they're listening to.
Exactly.
Keeping her composure, she called,
One thing I have noticed too is they're not bleeping out the names.
Yeah, there's probably I think it's all listed in the court records now, or
Yeah.
everyone knows anyway. Maybe that's
Yeah.
why.
"William, you have to come out. You have to talk to me. No more hiding, William. I can't see you." There was
I
no
think
he was
reply.
barefoot.
Yeah,
No, he was barefoot.
Twiggy has a question.
While all this was happening, Angela's husband, Peter, had
The only thing he had on was his Spider-Man outfit. That's what they said. He didn't put his shoes on. And I think they're actually in the photo. You could see them near the back door.
Yeah.
been at the Lakewood shopping precinct, making his work calls from inside his brand new Land Rover Discovery. After stopping to grab a newspaper, he headed straight back to Kendall. Peter told the police that at around 10:30 a.m, as he neared Benaroon Drive, he'd sent.
When he went missing, there was hundreds of people that came out to search, and if he had just wandered off, he would have been found within a few hours. He wouldn't still be missing. So, yeah.
sent Angela a voice-to-text message suggesting it was a good time to send the kids outside. William had a deep fascination with cars, trucks and planes, which was an interest Peter encouraged. The Tyrrell children always got a thrill out of watching their father arrive home and running out to greet him. It was a moment Peter looked forward to every day. But as he pulled up to his mother-in-law's house, it wasn't his children who came out to greet him, it was his wife. Angela looked panic-stricken. She gestured urgently for Peter to roll down his window. "Have you got William?" she asked. Peter frowned, confused. "Of course not," he said. "Why would you think that?" Frantically, Angela replied, "Because he's missing." Peter didn't ask for any more information. He leapt out of his car and took off running, shouting out William's name. Neighbours heard the commotion going on outside and came out to see what was going on. "I am looking for a little boy in a Spider-Man suit," Angela told them. "Have you seen him? His name is William." The neighbours searched their yards, checked their swimming pools and any other places that might be of interest to a young boy, such as cubby houses and play equipment. When Police Senior Constable Christopher Rowley arrived at Benaroon Drive, he conducted a thorough search of Mary's house. He was soon joined by additional officers who arrived at the scene. They checked cupboards and under furniture, going so far as to remove cushions from the couch and pictures from the walls. Benaroon Drive is a secluded, quiet street that backs onto scrubland. It consists of 21 houses, each of which is situated.
Exactly, it's just one of the 100 things that don't make sense with her story.
Oh, yeah.
Because he left, she's seen William, she was playing with William. He gets home and she asks if he has William.
The roads have changed now, haven't they, Ozzy?
Yeah. Yeah. So where that roundabout is, that would go up to the old highway. But there's like a whole new bypass. When did that new bypass go in? About 5 years ago?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years ago, the new, and like it completely cuts it off. You don't even go through Kendall or anything now.
Wow. My personal opinion is something happened to him and he's been put somewhere. You know what I mean? There would have been something by now.
Situated on a large block and set back from the road. At the end of the no-through road is a rugged dirt track surrounded by dense bush that eventually leads to the Kendall Cemetery. There is no foot traffic and no reason to be in the area unless you live there or are visiting one of the residents. Angela told the police she had only seen one unfamiliar car in the area, and that had been earlier on when the two Tyrrell children had been riding their bikes outside. It was a dark green or grey sedan that had briefly pulled into a neighbour's driveway before immediately reversing out and driving away. A couple who lived nearby heard the car too, but just assumed it was the...
And do you mean that's another thing I want to emphasise too, because do you know what I mean? I did live there, not at the time of when William went missing, but I have lived at Kendall. And when they say that only people that live in the area go there, is 100%. If you're not from the area, you stick out like a sore thumb in this town. Do you know what I mean? It's not, like it is off the highway, but it's not a town that people just come through or that you drive through to get somewhere else.
if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, it
it's a
makes
very,
sense to me.
it's very tiny.
A local postal worker. It therefore seemed highly unlikely to the police that William had been abducted, especially given the very short amount of time between when his mother last heard him and when he went missing. They thought the most
See, the problem is they didn't find a lot, and the problem with that is the fact that, do you know what I mean? So many people did come out to help, but it wasn't counted as a crime scene or anything like that. So all the people that came to help just ended up trampling all over the yard, all up around the area, trying to find William or something of William, that nothing was kept or spared. Do you know what I mean? Like, if there was footprints in that yard, it would have been trampled over by all the volunteers that came out. If there was any evidence around, do you know what I mean? It just wouldn't have been there, because that's one place where the police dropped the ball straight from the very start. And then how many officers have handed it over?
Oh yeah, that was like, they didn't keep the first guy's work either.
No, the first guy the first officer was there for 6 months, and then Jubilant took it over until we got to the inquest, and then once the inquest started, they threw out all of his evidence and started again as well, because they wouldn't
What
take
a
anything.
waste.
So 3 times over this case has been done.
Insane.
As far as I know, Kez, they did. I know the
I think
2
they
cars that they spotted was accounted for.
I think they took the grandmother's first, or was that after the grandmother passed away?
That was after she passed away, so that was probably about 12 months ago. A year and a half ago. Yeah, she'd been passed for about 2 years when they took her car. But that's because that's the car they believe she moved William in. Do you mean I still think that theory's going to stand? I don't think it's just going to disappear like the foster parents think it will. I think the inquest
No,
is
me
going to
neither.
have to say. I wonder if he talks about the cars in this too.
Yeah, I hope so.
most likely explanation was that he had wandered off and gotten lost in the bush. The rugged area was thick with weeds, reedy grass, and spiky lantana bushes. There were also numerous waterways, cliffs, abandoned mine shafts, and wild animals, creating plenty of hazards to explain why the young boy hadn't yet been found. But Peter and Angela were dubious. Although William was adventurous and had a mischievous side, they said he was also clingy and reserved. While he might hide and jump out for fun, he was the kind of kid who wouldn't try to cross the street by himself, and it would be very out of character for him to just wander off on his own. They said he had a clear understanding of boundaries and would deem rocky slopes and rugged terrain too dangerous to scale alone. They also said he would never blindly go off with a stranger. He didn't warm to people immediately, but rather sat back and assessed them first. A Benaroon Drive resident created a Facebook post online calling for volunteers to assist in the search. Within minutes, locals of all ages and demographics swarmed to the area, traversing through the surrounding scrub and driving the neighbouring streets shouting William's name. A 3-year-old girl sat in her pram, calling out, "You're not in trouble, William. You can come out now." The operation was overseen by experienced land search and rescue coordinators. Line searches were conducted in the surrounding bushland, while horses and motorbikes traversed the dense scrub and police helicopters searched overhead. Mary's house was thoroughly checked multiple times, as were other houses along Benaroon Drive. Different personnel were brought in to search the homes in case a fresh set of eyes noticed something that others had missed. Sheds, roof spaces, wall cavities and cupboards were meticulously checked. Sniffer dogs also battled the rugged terrain, but were unable to detect any scent of William Tyrrell beyond Mary's garden. The primary concern for the search party was that the young boy might be injured or unconscious, preventing him from coming forward to rescuers. There was also a serious fear he had drowned, prompting police divers and the Rural Fire Service to search and drain numerous dams, storm drains and water tanks in the area. The day was mild at 18 degrees Celsius, but as nightfall approached, dark clouds gathered and the temperature dropped significantly. With no sign of William, concerns mounted that if he was still alive, he might succumb to the elements overnight. Untreated dehydration or hypothermia posed serious risks. William also suffered from asthma, which worsened in the cold conditions and could be triggered by stress or by the powdery pollen released by the surrounding lantana bushes. The search continued overnight, with police calling for volunteers to register at the Kendall Showgrounds at 7 the following morning. Rain was expected, and volunteers were asked to wear high-visibility clothing suitable for wet weather and to bring plenty of water. The search was expanded beyond the scrub near Benaroon Drive and into the nearby Kendall and Middle Brother state forests. No stone was left unturned, yet there was still no sign of William. By Sunday,
One thing I do reckon, I bet you a lot of officers would love to go back to that time right now.
I agree.
I bet a lot of
Going-
things would be done different.
They would be.
Sunday, September 14, the two-day search for William remained fruitless.
Hey, kitty.
However, Angela told the police that she might have seen something significant on Benaroon Drive the day her son vanished after all. She said she'd completely forgotten about it at first, but the memory had come back to her while driving to pick up a relative from the airport. According to Angela, on the morning William went missing, she had looked out the window at around 6:40 and noticed two cars parked strangely on the street. They stuck out to her because both of their driver's side windows had been left open, which was something you wouldn't see in the city. Both of the cars were dirty, older models with tinted windows and no hubcaps. One was a gunmetal grey sedan, possibly a Falcon or a Commodore, and the other an off-white station wagon with a boxy back end, possibly a Camry. They were parked close to one another on the road between two properties, which Angela noted as odd given that any visitors to the area typically parked in the driveway of whichever home they were visiting. Angela hadn't mentioned any of these cars to her mother or husband. When she'd called emergency services to report William's disappearance, the operator had asked if she'd seen any suspicious vehicles in the area, and Angela had firmly answered no. No other residents of Benaroon Drive recalled seeing the parked cars either, but it was a helpful bit of information for the police. While William's disappearance continued to make the news, Peter and Angela stayed away from the spotlight and didn't make any public appearances. As the days passed with no sign of the 3-year-old, public conjecture started to grow about why the parents weren't talking. The speculation only escalated when a family friend made a national appeal for information on Peter and Angela's behalf. If they were genuinely concerned about William, the public wondered why they weren't doing everything in their power to keep their son's disappearance in the media, Some speculated that their lack of exposure meant they had something to hide.
They had a lot to hide, in my opinion.
Peter and Angela
They're
had
still
always
hiding.
wanted children. Unable to have any of their own, they decided to help those in need. In 2011, the married couple applied to become foster parents. They were put on the books of what was then called the Department of Family and Community Services, or FACS, after successfully completing the mandatory foster carer training classes and 2 short-term assignments. As a successful couple from Sydney's affluent North Shore, Peter and Angela made attractive candidates when Lindsay Tyrrell was placed into the foster care system. In 2012, Lindsay was sent to live with Peter and Angela, followed shortly after by her 8-month-old brother, William. According to those who knew Peter and Angela, the two were doting foster parents to the Tyrrell children. They gave them everything a kid could possibly want: a playroom full of toys, regular trips to playgrounds and parks, family holidays.
Okay, let's correct that a little bit with some of the facts.
Yes, let's
They
do
were
that.
made they were made foster parents after a couple of hours, what usually took most families a couple of months. And we could
Sauce.
only say money for
Ding
that.
ding.
And another little fact is that I'd probably say 12, but I know at least 6 months before William went missing, the foster mother was writing to Docs asking for help because she couldn't control William. He was turning up to visits with bruises all over him. Just some little facts that he's not quite putting out there.
Birthday parties, and most importantly, a stable and comfortable home life. Peter and William had a particularly strong bond, with Angela describing the two.
Twiggy, they did still care for William's sister up until about a year and a half ago when they had the intimidation charges against both the foster mother and the foster father. And those charges were against William's sister. And that's when she was removed from the home. She has been reunited with her bio mother. I don't know if it's permanently, but I know that she is actually seeing the bio mother again.
As absolutely adoring each other. As the children settled into their new home life, Peter and Angela transitioned from short-term carers to long-term carers, making them the legal guardians of the 2 Tyrrell siblings until they turned 18. The reality was, when it came to William's disappearance, his status as a foster child made it difficult for Peter and Angela to front the media.
All I know about with them now is that since the charges, they have had all of the children removed from their care now. So now they're just trying to keep themselves out of jail. In my opinion.
Yeah. I hope Bio Mom has cleaned up her life.
Oh, the bio mum has. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the foster mum. I read that wrong. Yes, the bio mum has. I think she's got 3 other children now. Might be 2, but
Cool.
yeah. And her children that she's had since then are permanently in her care. As I said, I don't know about the daughter, but I know the daughter is having contact and holidays there and getting to know her other brothers.
Yeah, I think the father's still
He's
in
a
and
mess.
out of jail, because he's a mess after William went missing. So yeah,
I don't think he's ever going to recover. He's everyone's tried to help him, but he's just not he did clean himself up, and he was cleaning himself up to keep William in his life, but after William went missing, do you know what I mean, he just lost it again. I know his family's really tried to help him, but even to this day, he's still just lost. And I don't blame him. I mean, after William and Lindsay were handed over to the Fosters, did the bio parents still have other children? Not at the time. So she's had children since, but no, when they removed them too, that was the only two they had in their care at that time. And then, yeah. Let me look into how old she is. I just want to double check. I know she was a couple of years older than William, but I will double check that for you, Kez. While this is playing, I'll go and double check it.
Okay.
For starters, they weren't legally allowed to identify themselves as his carers. Police needed permission from the relevant government departments before they were allowed to divulge any details regarding William's family situation. Secondly, they wanted to protect Lindsay Tyrrell's identity. If news got out that William was a foster child, it outed Lindsay too. Based on advice from facts, Peter and Angela made the decision to remain anonymous. This would also protect the reputation of the department who had assigned the children to their care. The true identities of William's foster parents, foster grandmother, and sister were banned from publication under court suppression orders. Any journalist or reporter who broke this rule was warned that they could face potential prosecution. Peter, Angela, and Mary are pseudonyms case file has created for clarity, while Lindsay is the pseudonym created for her by the courts. The decision to withhold Peter and Angela's identities from the public ultimately muddied public opinion. With no face of parental grief and desperation for the Australian public to cling on to, the case sparked suspicion against the parents instead of compassion. But Peter and Angela weren't the only ones feeling the weight of this decision. William's biological mother, 26-year-old Amy Tyrrell, not her real name, was heavily pregnant with her fourth child when the police knocked on her door in Western Sydney on the evening of Friday, September 12, 2014. Officers entered the house and were shocked to find a young boy matching William's description playing in the backyard. One of the officers looked at Amy and said accusingly, "What have you done?" But the boy wasn't William. It was his 18-month-old brother. Amy and her partner, Tyler Martin, not his real name, who was William's biological father, were confused by the police presence. They knew they were on the authorities' radar for a string of domestic violence, assault, and drug-related offences, and Amy's initial thought was that there might have been a warrant out for her arrest. When she was told that William went missing that morning, she was in disbelief. Amy had never wanted to put William and Lindsay into foster care, and she'd been taking steps to get them back. She wondered how her son could be missing when he'd been put into the care of guardians who were supposed to keep him safe. At first, Tyler thought it was a joke. But as the police began searching their house, the reality of the situation started to sink in.
Okay, so William Tyrrell's sister was 10 years old in October 2020, so she will be 15 October this year. Because that's when she gave her speech saying that she wanted to be a detective to find her brother. And she was 10 then. And that was 2020. So she'll be 14, turning 15 in October.
Well,
The police asked Amy and Tyler about their movements that day. Tyler said he'd woken up before sunrise to go to the local McDonald's restaurant to grab breakfast and use the establishment's free Wi-Fi. He was scheduled to work that day, but he sent his boss a text to let him know he couldn't make it due to a shoulder injury. When Tyler got home, Amy took their 18-month-old son out shopping for the soon-to-be-born baby. She said the two caught the train to the suburb of Blacktown, visiting various shops and making several purchases along the way before returning home at around 4 p.m. The police were dubious. After all, if Amy or Tyler had anything to do with William's disappearance, it wouldn't be the first time. Amy Tyrrell and Tyler Martin were both raised in low socioeconomic conditions and each struggled with their own set of personal issues and run-ins with the law. In 2008, they were introduced by one of Amy's brothers and they later began dating. It wasn't long before Amy became pregnant with Lindsay. But the young couple struggled. They had limited support and finances, and the demands of parenthood took a toll on their already volatile relationship. One night, after the couple had a fight, Amy began drinking heavily. She was pushing Lindsay in a pram on the street when police spotted her and thought she was acting erratically. Concerned for the baby's safety, they approached Amy and one of the officers tried to take Lindsay away. Amy subsequently punched the officer in the face. The incident was reported to FACS and Lindsay was handed over to the state and eventually put into Peter and Angela's care. By the time Amy gave birth to William, he was already on the department's radar for potential foster care. FACS believed that Amy and Tyler's toxic and often violent relationship created an unsafe home environment for children. The department therefore ruled that Amy wouldn't be able to keep William if she continued living with Tyler.
William would have been 14 this year and Lindsay will be 15. I thought there was 2 years between them, but there must only be one. Because William was born in 2011.
yeah.
I'm just double checking his birthday. So the 26th of June 2011. So he would have been 14 this year.
The couple stayed together but told the authorities their relationship had ended. Eventually, they were caught out, and the New South Wales Family Court ordered that William be handed over to FACS. Determined to keep William, Amy and Tyler took him and went on the run. A police task force was assembled, and several weeks later, the family was found hiding out in a small flat in Sydney's Upper North Shore. William was taken from his biological parents and reunited with Lindsay in the custody of Peter and Angela. As per standard procedure, Amy and Tyler were forbidden from having any contact with the foster carers, and they were only granted the occasional supervised visits with William and Lindsay. Each of these visits was overseen by a social worker. At first, the visits were weekly, then monthly, and then eventually, by the time William went missing, for 1 hour every 2 months. Amy and Tyler reluctantly adhered to these rules with every intention of regaining custody of their children. They undertook anger management courses, counselling, and joint parenting groups, unaware that the foster parents were already thinking about formal adoption. As soon as the police looking into William Tyrrell's disappearance became aware of his family situation, the possibility was raised that Amy and Tyler could have taken him. Yet, the pair were adamant that they had nothing to do with it. They both insisted they wouldn't do anything that could hinder their chances of legally regaining custody of their kids. They also knew how close William and Lindsay were and wouldn't dare take one without the other. Police checked CCTV footage, bank statements and receipts, all of which backed up the couple's claims that they were nowhere near Kendall on the day William went missing. The futile search for William Tyrrell continued for 5 days until police concluded that if he had simply gotten lost in the bush, it was no longer possible that he could still be alive. Instead, Strike Force Roseanne was created as investigators began to operate under the assumption that the 3-year-old had been abducted and possibly killed. The fact that William's disappearance had been treated as a missing person case from the get-go instead of a major crime presented some problems for the investigation. For starters, Mary Saunders' house on Benaroon Drive had never been considered a crime scene, and therefore it wasn't cordoned off or properly secured. With hundreds of volunteers, visitors and official personnel having already trampled through the yard and its surrounds, any forensic evidence such as footprints, tyre tracks or DNA were long gone or contaminated. Cars had also been free to come and go from the area without being checked. In addition, the police had searched some of the 21 houses on the street, but not all of them, with some of the residents having been relied upon to conduct their own searches. If William had been taken, each of these factors meant that vital evidence or a person of interest could have been overlooked. Police had no way of knowing what they
100%. Do you mean this is what I mean? And he's only saying the icing on the cake. The police just dropped the ball so much with this case from the very get-go that, do you mean, as we watch the 48-hour shows, that first 48 hours is the most important. And it's just, do you mean, we see it all the time. I know a lot of us watch all the crimes over in America as well. And we see these children going missing all the time. They treat them like missing, and they should, like missing person cases. But I think in the background, they should always have someone there doing a criminal one just in case. Because look how many turn foul or long-term missing, and, do you know what I mean, they've lost it because they treated it as just a missing persons case.
Yep. I mean, look at Sebastian, you know. He's another one.
There's so many of them, do you know what I mean? As I said, I know, fair enough. Do you know what I mean? Kids go missing and do that, but they should just have at least 1 or 2 officers in the background constantly just getting the evidence just in case it turns, just in case they need it, because once that moment's lost, it's lost. Once that evidence is gone, it's gone. And this case has haunted Australia for so long. If they just done things different, do you know what I mean? If they just called it off that yard and searched it properly, do you know what I mean? Footprints. Do you mean it might not have been William? Say someone did come and take William. It could have been that person's footprints that they could have got. It could have been anyone's. It's just, yeah. something I feel very strongly about. And as I said, it's not just Australia, that's worldwide. It needs to be done.
It does.
Might have missed. In Australia, it is extremely rare for a child to be abducted by a stranger. The person responsible is typically a relative or someone close to the family. Therefore, Peter and Angela were obvious suspects. Accepting this uncomfortable fact, the couple willingly handed over their phones, vehicles, and computers for forensic analysis, eager to be ruled out. Police looked into Peter's claims that he'd been in the next town over at the time William disappeared. Phone records and CCTV footage confirmed that he'd been in Lakewood at the time in question. Peter had made a conference call that lasted for 39 minutes before making another call and then ducking into a grocery store to buy a newspaper. Police considered the possibility that William could have died by accident and his foster family had disposed of his body and then faked his disappearance out of sheer panic. But they found absolutely no evidence to support such a theory, and by all accounts, Peter and Angela's desperation to find William seemed completely genuine. Lindsay had also been present when William went missing, and she hadn't said anything to the police to raise suspicion on her foster parents. When questioned about what William had been doing before he went missing, Lindsay told police that he was running out to see Daddy's car. Police also considered the possibility that William's biological parents could have organised to have someone snatch William on their behalf. The problem with this theory was that Amy and Tyler didn't even know William and Lindsay's foster carers' names or their address. Furthermore, no one had told Amy and Tyler that the trip to Kendall was going ahead. While the foster care agency had approved the trip, the biological parents weren't made aware of it. The trip to Kendall had also gone ahead a day earlier than was originally planned. Peter and Angela told the police they had been scheduled to drive up on Friday night, but Peter had finished work early on Thursday, so they'd decided to get a head start on the bumper-to-bumper traffic that typically jammed the Pacific Highway on Fridays. They had picked William and Lindsay up from daycare early on Thursday afternoon and headed straight to Kendall from there, stopping only to have dinner at McDonald's and to change the kids into their pajamas. The unplanned nature of the trip ruled out the possibility that it was a targeted attack. As far as Peter and Angela were aware, no one had followed them on their drive from Sydney to Kendall either. Police checked CCTV footage of their journey and the stops they'd made along the way, but found nothing to indicate the family was being trailed. The footage from their stopover at McDonald's showed William joyfully riding into the restaurant on Peter's shoulders, the very image of a happy family. Both William's foster parents and his biological parents were ruled out as suspects. Regardless, the possibility that William could have been snatched in an opportunistic attack was difficult for investigators.
They had footage of him at the house, so we know he actually got there. And there was footage of him going down. I have photos of him at McDonald's on the trip down as well, where he was on CC footage at McDonald's on the way down to the grandmother's. And the photos that were taken at the grandmother's. So yeah, we know he got there.
To comprehend. Benaroon Drive was a safe place where none of the other residents had ever encountered anything untoward, and children played on the street without fear. The isolated location of Mary Saunders' house at the end of the street, coupled with the lack of street traffic in the area, meant that a kidnapper would have had to coincidentally walk or drive past in the mere minutes that William jumped around the side of the house unsupervised. Had such a rare moment occurred, it would have taken an incredibly brazen offender to snatch a child in broad daylight with his family just meters away on a quiet street where any of the neighbours could have easily noticed an outsider. Several residents were home at the time, and all of them said they hadn't noticed anyone or anything out of the ordinary. None of them had been expecting any visitors on the morning that William went missing either. Still, police couldn't discount the possibility that someone could have dropped by without warning, seen William, and made the split-second decision to take him. It was also possible that William had heard a car coming and ran onto the street thinking it was his father arriving home before being snatched. However unlikely, investigators also theorised that someone could have heard the children playing earlier that morning and had lay in wait ready to strike if an opportunity arose. If so, they would have had to move incredibly fast. The fact that William was wearing the distinct Spider-Man outfit would have made it easy for someone to initiate a conversation with him, as it
You and me both, Twiggy. I'm sure there's a whole story with Frank Albert. Yeah, we answered that one.
Okay.
was an immediate talking point that would have appealed to William. A perpetrator could have used that to lure the young boy away voluntarily, or simply grabbed him and forced his silence. According to Angela, when she first realised William went missing, she was struck by how silent everything had gone. Then, she thought she heard a short, high-pitched scream coming from the bushland, the type of scream a child would make if they'd hurt themselves. Angela said she had ventured into the reeds towards the direction of the sound, but couldn't see any splashes of red from William's Spider-Man suit. She had brushed it off as her imagination, thinking it must have been a bird. Kendall was home to a species of bird known as a catbird, which makes a sound very similar to that of a crying child. At the end of Benaroon Drive, a dirt fire track leads into the dense scrub. If the perpetrator had been on foot, this could have provided an escape route for them to grab William and run off undetected. But the terrain in the surrounding bush was rough, and running off with a 3-year-old boy would have been no easy feat. If this was indeed a random, opportunistic attack, everyone agreed it would be one of the rarest and most unfortunate cases of William Tyrrell being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When asked if anyone unusual lived in the area, Mary Saunders pinpointed one person, a former taxi driver aged in his 50s who mostly kept to himself. While there wasn't anything overtly suspicious about him, he lived alone in a small house surrounded by bushland where he kept odd hours, typically sleeping during the day and hanging around his house at night. In the days following William Tyrrell's disappearance, some neighbours noticed that the taxi driver had uncharacteristically left his house. When he returned home a couple of days later, he was carrying a backpack and walked around his property as though checking each of his windows before going inside. An officer went to visit the former taxi driver and noticed something odd. A box had been installed over one of his windows, making it impossible to see inside. When questioned about his whereabouts on the day of William's disappearance, the taxi driver claimed he'd been sleeping at home alone, an alibi that couldn't be verified. The officer noted that the man had a small red mark on his wrist. A cursory search of the property revealed a stepladder in the laundry that led up to a manhole. The officer climbed to the ladder, wondering if the manhole could be used as a hiding place. But it was obvious the manhole hadn't been accessed in some time. When the police returned to visit the taxi driver again, his television had been paused on a news channel providing updates about William's disappearance. Although this indicated he was keeping an eye on the story, police found nothing to suggest he was involved in the crime in any way. The taxi driver soon sold his house and moved out of Kendall, saying there was too much activity in the area. By day 14 of the hunt for William, line searchers had painstakingly covered an area of 18 square kilometres. Various items were found, including an abandoned children's cubby house, number plates from a stolen vehicle, animal bones, a shovel, a spear gun, and other miscellaneous items. But all of them were ruled out of having anything to do with William's disappearance.
Sorry, I just saw that. Kitty Witty, he was a person of interest. He is a SCX offender, child offender. He also only lived 10 minutes from the house. So, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really have anything.
Sorry, I stepped away from the computer. I didn't see it till I came back. Very suspicious. He's also one of the ones that they're saying is involved with. Remember how a couple of months ago we showed that tree with the big cross and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one that they think's behind that too. Too much activity. It was a quiet area. That's what I mean. The whole area is dead quiet. Unless you need to go to Kendall, you don't. Do you know what I mean? The town lives within itself, if that makes sense. And it's just strange for this to happen there. Like, I was there as a kid and it's the safest little spot. Yeah. Yeah, bird tree. We went over that a couple of months ago and he's behind that too.
Wow.
Not a nice man. In the podcast, remember the man that was screaming?
Mm-hmm.
That's him. That was him. He was the one that was screaming and swearing in the podcast.
Oh,
and
wow.
we were saying how lovely voice he had.
Oh, yeah. I remember
Yep.
that now.
That was him.
And still, there was no sign of him. Investigators had no choice but to scale the search back. Instead, they turned their focus to known sex offenders in the area. This was no easy task. Within the 30-kilometre radius of Benaroon Drive alone,
and just to put it out there too, Bird Tree still hasn't been searched since all of that commotion a couple of months ago either. Police still haven't been out there.
Oh, my gosh.
Just as an FYI.
18 known sex offenders lived among the rural properties. Just further beyond that lived another 60. Detective Chief Inspector Gary Jubilant, who would later come to front Strikeforce Roseanne, remarked, "It's as if they've settled on this quiet, overlooked backwater like mosquitoes." Detective Jubilant told reporters that police intended to track the movements of everyone who was within a 1-kilometre radius of Benaroon Drive on the day William went missing. If anyone who had been in the area failed to come forward and identify themselves, Jubilant warned it would give the police grave concerns and be an immediate cause for suspicion.
Yep.
CCTV footage was collected from 12 businesses around Kendall. Police were particularly interested in the footage captured by the Kendall Tennis Club between 5 and 11 on the morning of Friday, September 12, 2014. This camera faced one of the main roads leading in and out of the village, and there was a chance it had captured the abductor's car. However, the footage was grainy and only captured the sides of the vehicles, not their number plates, making it difficult to identify the cars that came and went. However, there were numerous roads leading to Benaroon Drive, and it was possible the kidnapper hadn't been captured on any cameras at all. Although William Tyrrell's disappearance had made national headlines, investigative resources were limited, and questioning witnesses and persons of interest was a time-consuming task. Police were also inundated with reported sightings of William coming from all over the country. It didn't help that Spider-Man costumes were incredibly popular amongst young boys. Every potential lead, sighting, and piece of information was diligently recorded, but the hard part for police was figuring out which to prioritise. They worked tirelessly for several months, checking 169 CCTV cameras from outside Kendall, as well as analysing data from traffic cameras and mobile phone towers. But things moved slowly, and as the year drew to an end, they didn't seem to be any closer to finding William. Then, a call came in from someone who wanted to report a member of the community as a potential person of interest. 4 days before William Tyrrell went missing, his grandmother Mary called a local white goods repair company called Speding's Repairs after her washing machine stopped working. The business owner, 63-year-old Bill Speding, came to the house to provide a quote, only to discover that he needed to order a new part. He told
Now, this guy is one guy that I actually feel sorry for.
Oh, yeah, his life was absolutely ruined.
Yeah, he lost so much because of this.
Family.
And at the end, he was innocent.
Yep.
Mary he would come back to conduct the repairs whenever the part came in. On Friday, September 12, just 90 minutes before William vanished, Angela had called Bill Speding on her mother's behalf to follow up on the replacement part, as the washing machine still wasn't working. The call had gone straight to voicemail, so she left a message asking Speding to call her back. Mary said that he would likely show up at any time without prior notice. That's just how things were done in Kendall. Given that Bill Speding was one of the few visitors to Benaroon Drive in
the end, he lost his wife, his house, his job, his family, everything, because of being blamed for this. And has the tarnish that people still today still blame him. But yeah. And I know he got the payout, but what, do you know what I mean? That wouldn't pay. If I lost everything, no money value would pay that back.
No, it wouldn't.
Your family's your family, and all this poor guy done was do his job and try and help them fix their machine.
days leading up to William's disappearance, police had already taken him in for questioning in the early stages of the investigation. Speding had confirmed details about the initial repair call-out, but he denied having received a follow-up phone call from Angela on September 12. Police confiscated Speding's phone and
A lot of people did, Kitty Witty. A lot of people believed he was. He was also the one that Gary Jubelin was recording when he was kicked off the case. He was the illegal recording.
Oh, wow.
found no record of Angela's voicemail. This was immediately suspicious. Police already had Angela's phone data confirming she had made the call to Bill Speding, leaving officers to wonder if he had deleted it. If he had nothing to do with William's disappearance, they wondered why he would do such a thing. But Bill Speding steadfastly denied having ever received the message at all. He also claimed to have an alibi for the day of William's disappearance. According to Speding, he and his wife Margaret had coffee at a local cafe, leaving around 9:45 a.m. to attend a school assembly where their grandson had received an award. Afterwards, Speding said he went back to his office and worked a normal day before picking his grandchildren up from school. While Speding said his wife was the only one who could verify his alibi, police weren't overly concerned until the tip-off came through from a member of the public to report that Bill Speding had been accused of sexually assaulting 2 young girls in the past. It was alleged that in 1987, Speding had sexually assaulted a 3- and 5-year-old during an overnight stay in a caravan park. Another tipster also came forward to report having seen Speding access some storage sheds he owned 6 hours inland from Kendall on the day after William disappeared. Suddenly, Bill Speding was looking much more interesting to the police. They obtained bank statements from the cafe Speding claimed to have dined at on the morning William Tyrrell went missing, and confirmed that he and Margaret had indeed been there at 9:42. However, the cafe was only an 18-minute car trip from Benaroon Drive. If Speding was lying about attending his grandson's school assembly, police theorised that he could have driven to Mary's house to work on her washing machine when he'd come across William and made the split-second decision to snatch him. They questioned school faculty members and some other parents who attended the assembly on the day in question, but given the passing of time, no one could specifically recall seeing Bill Speding there. Although they said that the assemblies occurred frequently and each one tended to blur into the other. One woman had taken photos of the event on September 12, but she had since dropped her phone in the toilet and lost its contents. Strikeforce investigators were conflicted about how to act. If they decided to pursue a raid on Speding's home and business, the news would surely leak. If Speding found out he was a suspect, this would give him a chance to destroy any potential evidence. But if they got it right, they just might find William Tyrrell. On Tuesday, January 20, 2015, just over 4 months after William Tyrrell disappeared, detectives from Strikeforce Roseanne descended on Bill Speding's home in Bonny Hills, a small town 20 kilometres northeast of Kendall. He lived there with his wife.
And this was disgusting what they did here.
Yes. Really was.
And 3 grandchildren for whom they were the current legal guardians. It was a dramatic scene with an excavator, cadaver dog and forensic experts on standby. The search team scoured each room of the house and the dark, dank recesses of the basement before turning their attention to the yard and a woodpile outside. A plumber was even brought in to drain the property's septic tank. 11 kilometres from Kendall, in the coastal town of Laurelton, a search was also conducted at Speding's office. As feared, news of the raids had leaked, and throngs of media gathered outside both properties ready to capture any breaks in the story. Police seized phones, computers, and a mattress, but found no sign of William. There was one item of particular interest found in his van, though, a Spider-Man toy. Bill Speding was taken into custody and subject to 6 hours of grueling interrogation. Investigators put it to him that on Friday, September 12, 2004, he showed up at Benaroon Drive to fix Mary Saunders' washing machine, but saw William playing outside and made the snap decision to abduct him. They suggested that Speding had taken the 3-year-old in his work van and quickly fled the scene. Speding strongly rejected these allegations. He stuck by his alibi and denied having deleted a voicemail from Angela on the day William went missing. As for the Spider-Man toy found in his van, he claimed it belonged to one of his grandchildren. His wife supported this, saying one of the kids had given it to Speding to keep him company while he worked. But detectives weren't convinced. They thought there was something off about Speding and that he had a sly way of answering questions. Regardless, with nothing eventuating from the raids, he was free to go. By this point, Bill Speding's potential involvement in William's disappearance was a hot topic around town. A month before the raids, he had shared a Facebook post from another user that contained a picture of William Tyrrell and read, "Today, somebody is keeping a secret. They got up this morning, had breakfast, realized that they need to pick up some more milk, made some calls, all the while maintaining a poker face."
Probably had him pegged. I think they were just trying to make him guilty by public media.
Yep.
Buttons. I lose everything. Do we want to keep going?
Yeah, if it works.
It's got about 35 minutes to go. Okay.
Some viewed this as Speding's way of taunting the police, as though to say, "Catch me if you can." A week after the raids on Bill Speding's properties, the investigation was officially handed over to Detective Chief Inspector Gary Jubilant after the case's initial lead detective retired. Detective Jubilant was a veteran of the New South Wales Police Force. Known for his tenacity and resoluteness, Jubilant applied disciplined thinking and creative policing to help solve some of the country's most high-profile murder cases. He also worked on the Bowraville murders, as covered in episode 186 of Case File, and on the Matt Levison case, covered in the Case File Presents series, Maddie. Although he had a hard edge, Jubilant was admired by victims' families for his genuinely kind and compassionate nature. He was the kind of detective who took each case personally, giving the investigation his all and refusing to accept mediocrity. He promised William's foster family he would do everything he could to find William. By the time William had been missing for 6 months, police interviewed an elderly Kendall resident after hearing he had some information that could be useful to the investigation. Ronald Chapman lived on Laurel Street, about half a kilometre from Benaroon Drive. At around 10:45 on the morning that William went missing, Ronald claimed that he had stepped outside to check the mail. A fawn-coloured four-wheel drive sped past, rounding the corner so fast that loose gravel flew onto Ronald's lawn. In the back seat, Ronald saw a young boy matching William Tyrrell's description standing up without a seatbelt on. He had a bewildered look on his face and was wearing a blue and red outfit with black patterns on it, resembling a Spider-Man costume. The car was being driven by a woman who Ronald described as a plump blonde in her 30s. A blue sedan with a male driver sped behind in close proximity, as though the two vehicles were travelling together. Ronald said he swore at the woman under his breath for driving so fast with an unrestrained child on board. Police weren't sure what to make of this information. Ronald was adamant that the incident had happened, but it begged the question of why he hadn't reported it sooner. Ronald claimed that when he heard about William's disappearance, he did tell some acquaintances about what he'd seen. He assumed they would pass the information on to a local officer they were friendly with and expected police to come and question him about it. When they didn't, He just assumed they had more significant leads worth following. Ronald was known to be an honest man with an eye for detail, but some relatives who were staying with him at the time of this supposed incident said he'd never mentioned it. When pressed by detectives, Ronald admitted he could have dreamt the whole thing, but when shown a photo of William, he was certain it was the same boy that he'd seen. For William's foster parents, the decision to return to Sydney after William's disappearance had not been easy. But they felt there was little they could do to help in Kendall, and they needed life to return to as normal as possible for Lindsay. While the case continued making national headlines, things were tainted by the mysterious nature surrounding William's family status. The public still hadn't been made aware that William was a foster child, and suspicion continued to be cast upon his parents. The fact that they weren't talking led many to believe the family had something to hide. With their enigmatic status hindering public sympathy, the strike force bargained with the Department of Family and Community Services to let them release an interview with Angela and Peter online. While it still couldn't be revealed that William was a foster child, the aim of the video was to let people know he was dearly loved and sorely missed, and to give the foster parents the chance to plead for his return. The 21-minute video interview went ahead in April 2015, over 6 months after William vanished. While Peter and Angela's faces were blanked out, they could be heard crying as they talked about their love for the cheeky and vibrant little boy, describing their ordeal as a living nightmare. "I just can't believe it's happened," Angela said. "We just don't have our boy. We have no idea where he is. We don't know who's got him. We don't know what's happening to him. We know nothing about it. We just want it to be over." The couple said they continued to hold hopes that William would be found alive. Angela pleaded, "If somebody has him and if he is alive, I want him to be safe. I want him to be feeling loved, and I want someone to be looking after him. Because to imagine something else is going on, we can't live a life like that. We need to know where he is. His sister can't grow up never knowing what happened to her brother. Just to give him back. Take him to a church, take him to a police station, take him to a school. Give him back. Give him back." The video provoked mixed responses. While some people felt deeply for the grieving family, others questioned why their identities continued to be withheld. Online sleuths wondered whether the parents were involved in the crime, were in witness protection, or were part of something dangerous, like a criminal gang. The police did their best to dispel these suspicions, but the questions loomed over public opinion like a dark cloud. Peter and Angela began working with a not-for-profit public relations firm as a means to communicate with the public without having to reveal their faces. Together, they created a campaign titled "Where's William?", which included the launch of a website, billboards, and social media. The aim of the campaign was to provide the community with more information about William's disappearance, while hopefully
I mean, the one question I have too is why are they still allowed to hide their faces to this day? Because they still do.
Yeah, they really shouldn't be allowed to now. It's gone, like, it's been years now, you know?
Like, they're not, before it was because they were protecting the children and protecting the sister because she was still in their care, but she is not in their care anymore. They don't have children in their care. They shouldn't be allowed to have that protection anymore.
I agree, they really shouldn't.
Again, money.
Yep.
generating information that could assist with the investigation and ultimately bring the little boy home. They created missing person posters that the public and businesses could share, with coasters placed in pubs in the hopes someone might become loose-lipped after one too many drinks. To coincide with the launch, Peter and Angela released a statement that read in part, "This has torn away the fabric and foundation of our life as we know it. There is a huge gap of space, emptiness in our lives that we feel without William being here with us. We have been entirely shattered, emotionally exhausted, physically and mentally beaten. This is a pure living nightmare." William's sister continues to ask where her brother is and when he'll be home. "We've tried so hard to keep life as normal as possible for her, reminding her how loved and safe she is, even though William is not here. They were like two peas in a pod. For those who have families and children of their own, this is so unbelievably confronting. If it could happen to us, it could happen to them." Meanwhile, the implications against white goods repairman Bill Speding kept coming. One of his neighbours, a man named Dean Pollard, came forward to claim that on Saturday, September 13, 2014, the day after William Tyrrell went missing, he saw Speding's work van driving down a dirt track. It was near an area of dense forest colloquially known as Ghost Road. Dean claimed that when Speding saw him, he ducked down to avoid being spotted. Dean told police, "It was definitely Bill's van. I would know it anywhere." With this new information coming to light, a major search was organised of the bushland surrounding the area in question. If William's body had been left out in the elements, police were aware that there would be nothing left at this point but his small skeletal remains, which would be easy to miss. However, if he was buried with his clothes on, the polyester Spider-Man suit would take hundreds of years to disintegrate, and the rubber soles of his shoes would take decades. Dozens
Hey, my beautiful van, welcome in.
of uniformed police officers searched with the help of cadaver dogs, but found nothing relevant to the William Tyrrell investigation. Yet, something of interest did come out of it. While the search was underway, camera crews were on standby, ready to capture any discoveries. As the cameras rolled, they captured Bill Speding's van as it drove right past the search site, with Speding looking out the window. When questioned, Speding denied having been anywhere near Ghost Road on September 13. He claimed he had been celebrating the end of the football season at the local footy club, approximately 20 kilometres away. Although police still had no evidence against Speding in relation to William Tyrrell, suspicion against him was growing. The allegations that he'd sexually assaulted two young girls in the past were enough to warrant an arrest. If police brought Speding in for that crime, their hopes were that with enough pressure, he might cave and admit to being involved with William's disappearance. On Wednesday, April 22, 2015, almost 7.5 months after William went missing, a team of detectives arrived at Bill Speding's house in Bonny Hills. They placed him under arrest for the historic sexual assault crimes he'd been accused of. He was charged with 5 counts of sexual intercourse with a child under 10, as well as 2 counts of common assault. Speding vehemently denied the allegations. He claimed the crimes were fabricated by his ex-wife during a time when the two were going through a bitter divorce and custody battle. At the time, his ex-wife had been advised not to pursue the charges due to lack of evidence, and a judge had thrown the entire case out. This time, Speding was held in jail, pending the outcome of a trial. Bill Speding's cellmate was a sex offender in his late 50s named Tony Jones, who was serving a 3-year sentence. Although Jones had amassed a long criminal rap sheet that included charges for assault, breaking and entering, and various drug offences, his latest charge was one of the more vile. Jones had joined a local community group called Grandparents as Parents Again, which supported older people who had been given custody of their grandchildren for various reasons. Jones used his position to take
If there's a girls' night, I hope I'm invited.
Me too.
I just see it in the chat. It's like, you can invite me.
advantage of a young intellectually disabled girl by overdosing her with autism medication and sexually assaulting her while she was semi-conscious. He was subsequently convicted of aggravated child sexual assault. The fact that Tony Jones and Bill Speding were cellmates was no accident. Jones, who lived 23 kilometres from Kendall in the town of Wauchope, had also been established as a person of interest in William Tyrrell's disappearance. On the day William went missing, the unemployed former truck driver left home early, telling his partner Debbie he was going out into the bush with their son to collect scrap metal. But Debbie soon found their son at home with no knowledge of this supposed outing. Enraged, she waited at home to confront Jones about the lie. When Jones returned home at around 2 p.m. on September 12, Debbie claimed he was so intoxicated he could barely speak. This wasn't out of the ordinary. Jones was an alcoholic, often scrounging up scrap metal that he could trade for beer money. He allegedly told Debbie he'd been out drinking with his mate, Paul Bickford. Bickford was the former president of Grandparents as Parents Again, who had once been named Senior Volunteer of the Year. But, far from heroic, Bickford removed himself from the group after he was accused of sexually assaulting an intellectually disabled 11-year-old girl while on a drive to buy her lollies. The separate sex offences committed by Tony Jones and Paul Bickford ultimately came to light during the investigation into William Tyrrell's disappearance, and both men faced charges for their crimes. Police explored the possibility that the two men could have been part of a pedophile ring, but given they were both more solitary predators, this was deemed unlikely. However, there was something about Tony Jones that the police couldn't ignore. His partner Debbie drove a white station wagon similar to the one William's foster mother claimed to have spotted on Benaroon Drive on the morning of William's disappearance. Additionally, his habit of collecting scrap metal meant he had intimate knowledge of the bushland around Kendall and surrounds. Jones, who no longer had a driver's license, told police he didn't have access to the white station wagon. This was disputed by several witnesses who said he often took it without Debbie's knowledge. Jones also gave various alibis for the morning of Friday, September 12, 2014. First, he claimed he was out in Bago State Forest collecting scrap metal on his own. Then he changed his mind and said he was out chopping wood. Later, he changed his story entirely and said he was off sourcing a hot water heater from a neighbour. He denied ever being with Paul Bickford, despite telling his partner that the two had been drinking together. At around lunchtime on the day William went missing, a man was walking his dog around the bush tracks near Queen's Lake in Laurelton. He looked over and noticed a tanned man with a mustache sitting in a parked car with fogged-up windows. Something about the way the man was acting seemed suspicious. The dog walker waved at the man, who quickly wound up his window in response. When the dog walker returned from his stroll, the car and the man were gone. He didn't think much of it until he saw Tony Jones in the newspaper 8 months later, and immediately recognized him as the occupant of the vehicle. What's more, the car in question was an old white Toyota Camry station wagon. Jones denied being near Queens Lake that day. He said it couldn't have been him, as he had emphysema and couldn't sit in a car with the windows rolled up. Debbie's white station wagon was towed and taken in for forensic testing, but nothing of interest to the William Tyrrell investigation was found. However, it wasn't the only vehicle that could be linked to Jones. Police later received a tip-off from someone who had come across...
There is that many holes, and that's why I think I've spent so many years with my head in this case. And I think I've been down every one of them like 50 times.
Wow.
across a silver car abandoned in the Kendall bushland. They recognised it as the same make and model as a vehicle belonging to Jones. The informant led police to the area, but when they got to the location, they found that the car had been overturned and set on fire. Jones's companion, Paul Bickford, also denied any involvement in William's disappearance. He claimed he wasn't with Tony Jones on September 12 at all, but 41 kilometres away in Port Macquarie having lunch with friends, although he couldn't recall which friends or where they ate. In a bizarre coincidence, Bill Speding and Tony Jones had once lived across the street from one another. Police hoped that by pairing them in a cell together, one of them might be compelled to say something incriminating to the other about William Tyrrell. But the plan didn't work, and 3 months after Bill Speding's arrest for the unrelated child sex crimes, he was granted conditional bail and allowed to return home pending trial. News of his arrest had made national headlines, with the inference that he was the prime suspect in William's abduction. This had a hugely detrimental impact on Speding's family and business, and he took it upon himself to try to change the public's perception. Within days of his release from jail, a video appeared online. Reading from a pre-prepared script, Speding offered his condolences to William's family and stated that he had no involvement whatsoever in the young boy's disappearance. But the damage to his reputation was already done, with many thinking the bizarre video did nothing but further solidify his guilt. In September 2015, as the 1-year anniversary of William's disappearance approached, police released details about the 2 cars Angela had seen on Benaroon Drive on the morning William went missing for the first time. Many questioned why they had waited so long to do this, as vital witness accounts could be forgotten due to the time lapsed. The recording of Angela's call to emergency services was also released in the hopes it might elicit an emotional response and prompt a new witness to come forward. To mark the anniversary and support the ongoing search, thousands of people participated in community walks held across the country. Organisers of the Walk for William events hoped the show of support would encourage somebody to come forward with information, with one walk held as far away as Canada. Detective Inspector Gary Jubilant had been working tirelessly on the case, and the anniversary was a rude awakening. By this point, the strike force had been presented with every possible theory, from the credible to the ludicrous. With thousands of lines of inquiry still to be followed, there weren't enough hands on deck or hours in the day, and the work continued to pile up. Detective Jubilant remarked to the press, "The anniversary is a milestone that no one in the community or family wanted to reach. 12 months without finding out what happened to William. From a police point of view, that plays very heavily on us. We feel like we've let them down." By December that year, the strike force was no closer to finding answers. William's foster parents released a Christmas poem to keep the case in the public consciousness. It read in part, "Christmas is a time for happiness. It's a time when families come together and hold each other tight, but not our family and not this Christmas night, while our beautiful little boy William is still missing, absent from our sight. We love you, our darling boy. You are never far from our thoughts. We remember everything about you. Your amazing laugh, your kindness and the love you share with your sister, your complete adoration of your daddy, your funny faces for mummy, your kisses, your hugs and your tears. We remember your first words, your first steps, your first fears. We miss everything about you, our beautiful little boy." Although Peter and Angela had been cleared from the investigation in its very early stages, some among the strike force thought it was worth looking into them again to be 100% sure. Some questions had arisen about a possible inconsistency in Angela's story. In police interviews, she had claimed that William was wearing shoes at the time he went missing. However, in the photos she'd taken of William at 9:37 a.m, just minutes before he disappeared, he'd been barefoot. His shoes, a pair of sandals with Velcro straps, sat near the back door. Members of the public had also responded negatively to the recording of her call to police. Many thought she sounded much too calm for a mother whose child had just gone missing.
She did.
The couple were summoned to the police station under the guise of it being a routine appointment. Once they arrived, they were separated and interrogated at length about the day of William's disappearance. Detective Jubilant, quote, went hard on them. Asked about the shoes, Angela said William had been barefoot when she took the photos, but she had told him to put shoes on, which he was capable of doing on his own, because there were prickly weeds and dog feces in the grass. Unbeknownst to the couple, while all this was going down, covert listening devices were placed in their car. If Peter and Angela had anything to hide, police hoped that they might divulge something important as they discussed what they'd just experienced on their drive home. But both of their stories remained unchanged, and nothing of interest was captured in the covert recordings. Detective Jubilant was confident that there was absolutely no evidence that raised any suspicion in regards to their involvement, and again, they were eliminated from the investigation. By September 2016, the search for William Tyrrell had become one of the largest ever in Australian history. A second arm of the strike force was established purely to work through the 1,000 plus names that police had identified as potential persons of interest. Detectives were required to travel all over the country to locate each individual and cross them off the list. But despite the epic scale of work being put in, the investigation continued with no significant breakthroughs. Strikeforce detectives wanted to offer a reward for information, but they knew it would need to be a sizable amount of money if it was going to encourage anyone to speak. As Detective Jubilant explained, it would need to be enough money to make a wife turn against her husband, or for one pedophile to betray another. With support from the New South Wales Police Commissioner and the State Premier, they got their wish. On the second anniversary of William Tyrrell's disappearance, a $1 million reward was announced. At the time, it was the largest reward ever offered in New South Wales, and the announcement was broadcast heavily on television and shared across social media. When nobody tried to claim it, investigators drew two conclusions. Either William's abductor had acted alone and not told a soul, or if more than one person had been involved, none of the offenders were prepared to rat the others out. The strike force continued questioning known sex offenders and pedophiles. Some officers were given the grim task of viewing child exploitation material in case William could be identified in footage or photographs. It was a brutal job that took a severe emotional toll, but members of the strike force persevered with one ultimate goal: to bring William Tyrrell home. In mid-2016, the Department of Housing received an application that made them stop in their tracks. A woman named Kim Loki had applied for a home in Sydney, citing William Tyrrell's biological grandmother, Tracy Martin, not her real name, as her intended roommate. The two women had worked together in the past and had recently rekindled their friendship, with Kim posting photos of herself and Tracy together online to acknowledge their bond. But there was something that rang alarm bells for the Department of Housing. Kim had applied for a 3-bedroom house, even though she stated that she and Tracy would be the only occupants. When William had been a baby and his biological parents had hidden him from the authorities, Tracy Martin had apparently helped them. This led the department to question whether that 3rd bedroom was intended for William. Perhaps Kim had been helping hide him all along. The department notified the police, who placed Kim under covert surveillance. What they discovered was shocking. Kim drove a grey Holden Commodore sedan, similar in colour and shape to one of the vehicles Angela claimed to have spotted on Benaroon Drive on the day of William's disappearance. Kim was also a former customer of Bill Speding, having hired him to fix her washing machine several years prior. But perhaps most alarming, one of Kim's flatmates had a notable brother-in-law, person of interest in the William Tyrrell case, convicted sex offender Tony Jones. She was also friends with Jones's now ex-partner, Debbie. When questioned about her whereabouts on Friday, September 12, 2014, Kim Loki claimed she was at home in Sydney, some 360 kilometres from Kendall. But she had nothing to verify her alibi. Her explanation for wanting a 3rd bedroom was that she needed a studio for her art. Kim appeared on Channel 9's A Current Affair program to deny having anything to do with William's disappearance. She rejected allegations that it was her car seen on Benaroon Drive, stating, "I wouldn't be game to do stuff like that, kidnapping a little kid." The heat was placed on William's biological grandmother, Tracy Martin, until another twist emerged. Tracy wasn't close friends with Kim Loki at all. The two women were nothing more than former work colleagues. Kim had used photos of them taken at a work function years prior as testimony to their friendship, and had simply wanted to ingratiate herself into the William Tyrrell investigation. She tried to sue A Current Affair for money they promised her for the interview, but the case was thrown out of court. The fact that William was a foster child had been publicly discussed online by those invested in the case, but by mid-2017, this fact still hadn't been officially clarified. It continued to muddy public perception, with sympathy for the anonymous family slowly dissipating in the eyes of those who viewed them as detached. A woman who wasn't connected to either of the families in any way took it upon herself to fight to make this detail public. Having been sexually assaulted in a foster home during her own adolescence, the woman became an advocate for other foster children and believed the public had a right to know the truth about William's family's situation. The case went to court, where lawyers for the Department of Family and Community Services argued that there was a stigma attached to being a foster child. If William was ever found alive, this stigma would follow him for life. Likewise, his sister Lindsay would suffer from the same stigma. William's foster parents agreed that they wanted to keep this information secret, along with their identities. Up until this point, William's biological parents, Amy Tyrrell and Martin, had mostly been kept on the sidelines of the investigation. They didn't receive the same regular updates as his foster parents, weren't acknowledged in the media, and had been excluded from the national public relations campaign aimed at bringing awareness to the case. However, they had always wanted it to be publicly known that William was in foster care at the time he went missing. The judge agreed that the public Angela were William Tyrrell. He lifted the restrictions that prevented this fact from being reported, ruling that William being in foster care was a legitimate matter of public interest. For the first time since William went missing, the names of his biological parents were allowed to be shared, while the names of his foster parents and sister continued to be suppressed by a court order. Afterwards, Amy Tyrrell appeared on national television for the first time. In a heartfelt interview with television presenter Melissa Doyle for Channel 7's Sunday night program, she admitted to having made poor choices in the past, but said she was trying to be the best mum she could be. No longer in a relationship with Tyler Martin, Amy said William and Lindsay shouldn't have been taken away from her in the first place. She believed the whole situation could have been improved if there had just been better support for mothers who were experiencing domestic violence. Amy cried as she fondly recounted memories of William as a baby. She spoke of how difficult the experience of losing him twice had been, and how much it hurt her to know that William and Lindsay were no longer together. Sobbing, she begged whoever had her son to bring him home unharmed, saying whoever was responsible, quote, needs a bullet. Whatever had happened to William, Amy believed that his foster parents should feel guilty. I don't want to blame the carers, she said, but they were responsible for looking after William, and they failed. As police continued to make their way through the long list of persons of interest, when speaking with Kendall locals, one name in particular kept coming up. The individual lived a reclusive lifestyle in an overgrown property near Benaroon Drive, and some people thought he was worth looking into. Police arrived at the man's house, and what they found was disturbing. Outside, animal carcasses hung from pieces of string. Inside was even creepier. At the end of the man's bed, a shrine of sorts had been made to William Tyrrell. It featured photos of William, along with quotes about the investigation that had been cut from the newspaper, as well as handwritten poetry about the case. Due to the man's unconventional lifestyle, police nicknamed him Gorillas in the Mist, after the book and film of the same name about an American scientist who moved to the remote forests of Rwanda to study primates. Police questioned Gorillas in the Mist extensively, but found nothing to suggest he was involved in William's abduction. If anything, they thought he seemed lonely and appreciated the police company. However, there were certain things about his behaviour that they deemed concerning. Not wanting to take any chances, the police decided to put Gorillas in the Mist under surveillance by installing hidden cameras in the bush surrounding his property. Before long, one of the cameras went missing. Police had no idea what had happened to it until 6 weeks later, when it suddenly reappeared under strange circumstances. To be continued.
So that's the end of part 1. It does get worse, and there's still more to go.
Yep. Just worse, more holes than Swiss cheese.
Yeah. So next Wednesday we'll go through part 2 of this one and watch the second part. But yeah, that's part 1. As I said, I have put the link in chat, so if anyone wants to go ahead and watch part 2 before then, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll go through it next week. I got Focus to put his link in chat. He is going live at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, our time. It is up. His live is up, so if you're not, like if you want to know what time it is in your area, just go and have a look. He's got one tomorrow night. He does have a special guest coming up tomorrow night. But it is going to be his first one solo, so go easy on him. But I'm sure he's going to do fine. Other than that, I think Friday or Monday I'm still working on the next one that I'm doing. What is that forgiveness one? As far as Desi Freeman, he is still on the run. They're still looking for him. Nothing's changed.
Real.
They're searching mines and everything now, but yeah, not much has changed on that one. But yeah.
Do you think he unalived himself?
No.
No.
No. Not in my opinion. I don't think he has. I think he's still out there. But I also think someone's helping him.
They have to be. I mean, it's been 11 days.
Mm-hmm. And they let photos out today. The Daily Mail had a recording of when the officers were shot. I'll see if I can find the one I watched today, and I'll put it in our Facebook page, because they had photos. They were showing photos of it when it happened, or just before it happened. So, and they show the bush that he ran into and everything. So I'll see if I can find that, the one I was watching, and I'll put it in our Facebook page for anyone. I'm not a true crime. There are channels out there that need to focus. Yeah.
Yep.
And tomorrow night, everyone's going to understand what focus is. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming in. Kez, I'm going to have to catch up with you, because I am going to see Miss Van in November. If you want to come for a trip, we're going to see Jelly Roll. So I'm so excited. But other than that, I will see you all. Or if you're in Focuses tomorrow night, I'll be there. But other than that, I'll see you all next time.
Every true crime on the rise. Investigate the scene, uncover the lies. From Melbourne to Sydney, all the way to Perth. No case too tough, we'll dig into the dirt. We'll crack the code, find the truth, bring justice to the table. No excuse, Australian legends in the game, bringing light to darkness, no shame. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. From cold cases to missing persons, laborers and detectives in our hearts, we'll never give up. But justice and truth will always hear us. Ooh, thank you so much. Let's celebrate cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. So much. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide glass for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best.